Amanda has a master's degree in psychological counseling and has worked as a professional in the field of mental health for several years before returning to Iowa State to work towards her doctorate. She completed her PhD in the spring of 2011 in Human Development and Family Studies. Amanda is now a faculty member of the same department. Her research focuses on modern maternity care experiences in the U.S. She is a certified doula through DONA, international and certified childbirth educator through ICDA. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you very much. And most recently, I am the co-founder of this organization, a grassroots organization called Iowa Birth Activists. We just formed this summer in 2012 in June when myself and the two other co-founders went to a conference where the mission was to lay the groundwork for a full-scale birth revolution. We brought together people from all over the country that were interested in seeing change and moving that change and being actors. And that's where we were born. What we're really about is getting over the little things, kind of the bureaucracy of organizations and just moving into action. We have recognized that there's injustice happening when it comes to how we conduct birth in this country, and we believe that we need to see that change. One of our little taglines is that we are sowing seeds of change. And what we mean by that is that in order for us to reap change in generations from now for our children and our children's children, we know that we need to plant the seeds now, and we know that it's a process. So that's what we're all about, is planting those seeds of change now so that we will see it later. Our slogan is telling the truth about birth, promoting equal access to evidence-based maternity care. Is this even working? Evidence-based maternity care, and promoting good outcomes for everyone, moms, babies, and families. So most people ask, so what is the truth about birth? Well, the truth is, this is my take-home point, there is a gap when it comes to evidence and practice in how we conduct birth in this country. And what Iowa Birth Activists is all about is we're saying that we need to pay attention to that, mind the gap. We need to acknowledge that in order to change that. We ultimately would like to see that gap close or bridge that gap. Some of the other evidence that I'm talking about our scientific research. And our research is telling us that a lot of what is standard practice is not promoting a good outcome. Some examples would be that the research tells us that we should have access to vaginal birth after cesarean, access to food, water, movement during labor, access to choose how you give birth, position, partners. So what's happening when we are not practicing evidence-based care? Here's our infant mortality rate for the United States. Comparable nations, there we are down on the bottom. These numbers are not getting better. This is from 2004, but it's still relevant today. In fact, they're getting worse. The next slide is going to show our maternal mortality rate. Can't find us? We're way down there on the bottom again. So what we're seeing is that when we're not practicing evidence-based care, we're not having some good outcomes. But for Iowa Birth Activists, we're about more than just these numbers. Although clearly they represent a crisis, and I think most people say, whoa, that's not good. We spend more than any other nation on healthcare, and yet in the past 25 years, our maternal mortality rate has doubled in this country. But again, what we're talking about is not just improving these numbers, because being well and a good outcome is about a lot more than just surviving, right? So what's the holistic picture of healthcare? That's really what we're talking about, and specifically maternity healthcare. And this is just a reminder to say, just because we've done something for a long time and it's become culturally normative, doesn't mean that that's a good outcome. As we know, times change, and for Iowa Birth Activists, we think that we know the time is now and change is necessary. So how many people here are human? How many of you were born? Then you recognize how important these issues are for everyone here. And in fact, this slide is just talking about a case that happened in Europe where basically they went to the European Supreme Court to say that it is a human right to choose where and with whom you give birth. Now that didn't happen in our country, but that speaks volumes. Human right to choose where and with whom. So here's some pictures of some choices. At home, birthing center, hospital, and how does that affect outcomes like breastfeeding? Again, promoting a good outcome. Here's another issue, maternity leave. This is just speaking to the culture that we have in our country and how we talk about birth and the period surrounding birth. That's how many paid weeks the United States gives. 0. Comparable nations right there, a lot different. So we're talking about a cultural much bigger than just a small, our state alone. And what about the baby in all of this? Like I said, human rights here. What about starting your life free from fear and trauma? What about equipping our parents to feel confident and capable and empowered to parent? Talk about seeing ultimate change in our society generations from now. It starts at birth. I want to clarify what we are. We are informed citizens. We are not just a mob of angry moms. We are committed to seeing social change. We are not just another feel-good group. We are passionate about seeing good outcomes. We are definitely not about promoting one-size-fits-all births, because in fact we feel that's part of the problem that's got us here in the first place. We are really about promoting informed choice, which the first step is knowing you have a choice, but we are not about telling people what to do. We also recognize that change takes time, and there are lots of different pieces to this puzzle. Some of that will come from political change, some of that will come from legal action, and a lot of it will come from consumer awareness. It's just informing people that there are different options out there and that you have a right to make a choice when it comes to your health care, and specifically maternity care. We really appreciate the quote from Margaret Mead, which you've probably all heard before. Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And we also recognize that every little pebble makes a ripple, and big stones make a ripple, and we're committed to continuing to do that, because eventually those ripples will build to a wave. One of the things that we have done since we formed is we hosted a rally with improvingbirth.org on Labor Day on the state capitol. We had 2 media outlets out there. We had about 100 people. This rally happened nationwide in 47 states, and there were 95,000 people that participated in the rally at the same time across the country. And really, it was a rally for change. It was saying, we need change. That's really, really big. We do not stand alone on these issues. These are just some other organizations that are putting out this research and saying that it's time for things to change. So we don't stand alone here in Iowa. We've got a lot of big backing, and it's really exciting. The time is now. Thank you.